Hello, hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Hearthstone's the game. And today I'm going to take you through a deck guide for a brand new League of Explorers budget deck I've created. This is the League of Explorers Budget Beast Druid. This deck takes advantage of a pretty wide number of beast cards that were introduced with the League of Explorers Adventure and allow you to create a pretty interesting beast deck in the Druid class. So do keep in mind that as a budget deck, this will require you to buy a few wings of League of Explorers. So it will require either some gold or a small cash investment. But outside of those wings, it will only take an additional 500 dust or less. So you won't be using a ton of arcane dust to craft this deck on top of the wings that you've purchased in League of Explorers. So this deck is really designed for someone who is new to the game and already bought into League of Explorers because it's the latest expansion and they wanted the new cards. And they're trying to assemble a budget deck pretty quickly using all those League of Explorers cards along with just a handful of cards they've crafted to complete a deck. So this is a really surprisingly competitive deck created mostly out of League of Explorers with a small dust set of cards on top of that. So the general strategy for the Budget Beast Druid deck here is one of aggression, but it's not just totally face aggression. It's building a small board and then leveraging that board in certain ways to add up to a ton of damage to the enemy's face over time. So you're not necessarily going to win on turn 3 or 4, but you will have a few ways to win on turn 6 or 7 on the back of a handful of minions and things like chargers. We have a few different charging minions, stealth minions that allow you to do damage, as well as burst damage spells like Starfire or even Living Roots, in combination with the new card Jungle Moonkin, which has a nice spell damage buff. And then finally as well, we have Savage Roar to combo off of any boards you have with a handful of minions. So there are a few different ways to start out with early aggression in this deck and then leverage that aggression and small chippy damage to the face to dig out a win with some mid to late game cards that allow us to do surprising amounts of damage directly from the hand. So that's the strategy for the deck. Let's just go ahead and break down each and every card real quickly to give you an idea of why it's in the deck and what it can do. So starting off is Living Roots. This is a Grand Tournament card. It's a spell, but it allows you to do a couple different things. You can either use it as a damage spell for 2 damage to clear off a minion, or sometimes even hit the enemy face. Alternatively, you can summon 2 1/1 saplings. So in the late game, you'll usually use this as a spell for damage, but if you get it on turn 1, it's fantastic to open up with a couple 1/1 minions right off the bat. Sir Finley Murgleton is a new card from League of Explorers. And although this doesn't really necessarily fit the archetype of this deck all that well, it is a really strong 1-drop that you'll have for free if you're playing League of Explorers already. So it's just a good body to put in the deck as well. The battle cry can be pretty interesting because Druid's hero power, while it's good, it's not always exactly what you need. And sometimes Sir Finley is great in the early game to set you up with a hero power, maybe like Mage's hero power, which can be great for chipping and damage, or Hunter's hero power for doing damage. But it can also be good in the late game if you're like desperately searching for lethal and you need to buy yourself a turn or two. Using the Priest Heal or Warrior's Armor Up can enable you to do that. So Sir Finley's not just an early game body that trades efficiently and tends to stay alive for things like Savage Roar for at least a turn or two. He's also got some utility with that battle cry, so he's a nice addition even though he doesn't really fit otherwise. Up next is Wrath. This is a pretty common Druid spell from the classic set. You can use it to do 3 damage to a minion or 1 damage and draw a card. This deck doesn't have a lot of traditional card draw. It has a couple different Discover effects that are useful with Jeweled Scarab and Tomb Spider, but having a little extra card draw is nice. You'll occasionally need to clear really high threat minions like a Knife Juggler or a Darnassus Aspirant from the enemy, which is always good. It can do even crazier things on the back of Jungle Moonkin with that spell damage buff, so you can like clear a 5 health minion, for instance, with Wrath for 2 mana, which can be totally huge. Then there's Druid of the Saber. This is not a beast initially, but when you transform it and play it, it will actually be a beast, so this is really the first card that enable some of the beast synergies in this deck. And either way, it's really just a fantastic card to fit the goals of this deck. You can use it as a charged minion sometimes to activate an extra Savage Roar body for lethal. It also does the same thing in stealth. If you don't know you have Savage Roar, but you're setting up for damage in a future turn, it can tend to stay alive via stealth, which also means you can stealth it and proc in a beast effect in a later turn, like Druid of the Fang, for instance. So it gives you that option as well. Up next is Huge Toad. This is another beast introduced with League of Explorers. This is not a fantastic minion in general, and I don't think it's going to see a play in many constructed decks, but it is a nice beast for us to activate our Druid of the Fang later on. And it still has a strong aggressive body, and the Death Rattle effect does do a little extra damage, which can be nice to ping off a little 1/1 minion from the enemy, or even do 1 extra damage to the enemy face. Up next is Jeweled Scarab. This is another beast. It's really just a 1/1 though that's used to discover a 3-cost card. Its body's not that valuable, nor is the fact that it's a beast, but it is great because you will be able to discover some pretty nice 3-cost cards from this from time to time. If you look at the Druid's 3-mana cards, not all of them are going to be that useful. Healing Touch is not really fitting the goal of this deck. Mark of Nature, though, can give you some extra damage. Druid of the Flame can give you a nice minion. Savage Roar is a little extra damage. Grove Tinder's a solid minion, and Mounted Raptor is fantastic, and this is the one I've been getting the most often. So there are some cool things you can do with it, and there's also the chance to get a neutral 3-mana card. So Arcane Golem can be fantastic. Argent Horse Rider fits into the deck pretty well, and there are a few other things. Like you can get some extra card draw from Cold Light Oracle. I've done that to win a game. So heal from Earthen Ring Farseer. There are options. The neutral cards, of course, are much less likely to show up from Jeweled Scarab, so you're more likely to see these. But either way, it's just another card draw to extend the length of your deck and help you find answers. And then there's Savage Roar. This is your finisher spell that gives all your characters +2 attack, including your hero. You'll use this with a couple minions on board. You'll use it in combination with chargers like Druid of the Claw or Druid of the Saber to piece together lethal damage from out of the hand and surprise your opponents. Now, of course, most Druids use this in combination with Force of Nature for the combo effect, but this is an epic card that's awfully expensive to craft and won't fit into our budgetary limits. So, of course, you can add this one later on as your collection grows, but for now we're just going to have to stick with Savage Roar since it is a free card. Brand Bronzebeard is another legendary that kind of fits into this deck simply because it's a solid 3-mana body, much like Sir Finley Murgleton is a solid body for his cost. The effect can be good with Jeweled Scarab and Tomb Spider, but there really aren't that many Battlecry minions in this deck, and Bran is not here because of his effect. He's just here as a solid 3-mana minion that can stay alive for a turn or two and set up combos, and occasionally to help you find some even more helpful cards out of Jeweled Scarab or of Tomb Spider. And then there's Mounted Raptor. This is a really nice new 3-drop added in League of Explorers for Druids that sets up even more beast options. It's really kind of a mini piloted Shredder. It has a similar stat alignment and a similar effect, just 1 mana cheaper across the board. So it's a sticky minion. It trades efficiently, helps you keep stuff on the board to set up Savage Roar. So it can do a couple different things well. After that is Swipe. This, of course, is just the go-to Druid clear spell. It can do a lot of great things in a metagame where there's a number of 1-health minions showing up. It's also really cool when you combine it with Jungle Moonkin because you can do 6 damage to one target and 3 damage to everything else, which often means you can clear an entire enemy board while still doing 6 damage to the opponent's face, and that's incredibly powerful and very, very good. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little. Up next is Jungle Moonkin. This is another new beast from League of Explorers. This is pretty crazy as a 4-mana 4/4. It's not that exciting on its body. That's solid, but it's nothing to write home about. But the effect is nuts. Both spell players have spell damage +2. There are a few different spells in this deck that benefit from that. Living Roots can do 4 damage. Wrath can do 5 damage. Starfire can do 7 damage. And Swipe, of course, as I just mentioned, can do 6 and 3. All of which are really, really crazy. But do keep in mind that this is a little bit of a risky play against some classes. A Mage, for instance, could do an 8 damage fireball right against your face, thanks to Jungle Moonkin. So you do need to time this card well and use it conservatively And typically don't play it unless you're following it up immediately with a spell, because you might just get yourself in trouble and set up your opponent without really benefiting yourself. After that is Piloted Shredder. This, of course, is kind of the go-to 4-drop for every deck ever and always. It's just such a high-value minion, packs a lot of stats and aggression into its body. It's very sticky to set up Savage Roar combos, so it's really the perfect 4-drop for any aggressive or mid-range deck, including this one, even though it doesn't necessarily have any beast synergy or do anything to fit the goals of the deck specifically. It's just too good to pass up, and since it's a common card, it's also very efficient to craft. There's Tomb Spider. This is a beast that also allows you to discover a beast. So this deck in and of itself really only has one beast synergy card, which is Druid of the Fang. This is the only card in the whole deck that benefits from having a beast. So you might wonder why it's called a beast deck in the first place. And that's because Tomb Spider will show up pretty often in your hand, and it will discover beasts that also have beast synergies. So this card will find you a beast from time to time that can also set up your other beast. Something like if we go to, well, we can't go to 100 cards, but there are a handful of different beast cards that benefit off of other beasts, and you'll occasionally find those, and it's really nice to have all these other beasts when you do run into one of those from this card's Discover effect. Now, as a 3/3 body, this is a kind of low tempo play, so it's not always the best turn 4 play. It's sometimes something you want on turn 7 or 8 to find an answer like a King Crush late in the game or a Gazarilla, some threat that can really extend the depth of your deck. So it's a little risky to play on turn 4, but otherwise just a really solid beast that also draws you a card. And then up next is Druid of the Claw, very common Druid minion. You'll often want to use it as a charge to do 4 damage. Other times you might be desperate to protect some other high-value minions on your board and decide to taunt it, especially if you're digging for lethal and you're scared the opponent's going to kill you and you need that extra 6 health from the Druid of the Claw taunt. After that is Druid of the Fang. This is not a card you traditionally see played a lot, but this deck has so many beasts and a lot of cheap beasts as well that were added with League of Explorers that it's really pretty easy to get this effect to go off. Rarely ever will this card just be sitting in your hand and you not have a beast either on the board or a cheap one in your hand to activate with it. And in aggressive Druid decks, you'll often see a card like Fell Reaver. If you see Fell Reaver here, oops, we passed it up. Fell Reaver, which is just a 5-mana 8/8 that you drop on the board, and it's a huge bomb, and if your opponent doesn't have an answer, it does so much damage over a turn or two that despite its downside, it's so good it wins you games. Druid of the Fang is kind of that card in this deck. Another similar card is a Sea Giant. You'll see a lot of aggressive decks use Sea Giant in the same way, like a cheap, really big body. And that's what Druid of the Fang does in this deck. Sometimes it's a 7/7 that they just can't answer, and it'll do 14 damage to the enemy's face, which when you've got so many other aggressive cards adding up damage, that's more than they can handle and will win you the game. So sometimes they'll have a big game hunter, of course, to kill it, and you'll be really sad that you played it, but that's still only, like a 3-mana card for a 5-mana card, so it's not that huge of a tempo loss. After that is Stranglethorn Tiger. This is another card you don't always see in constructed play, but it's actually really good as a stealth body. Sometimes you can play it and guarantee yourself 5 damage to the enemy's face next turn. It's also protected so that you can guarantee an activation of Druid of the Fang. And it's good to set up a body for a Savage Roar on a future turn, because that's like 7 damage with Savage Roar on it. So you can do a couple really nice things all by itself. And finally, Starfire is the last card in the set. This is your bailout card in a sense. When everything else has failed and the enemy still has 10 health and you need to find a way to kill them, and it's turn 8, you can draw a Starfire, do 5 damage, and draw a card and land a swipe or something like that, and just keep poking away at them while trying to find the kill. So you can occasionally use it to get through taunts or clear a really threatening enemy minion like an Emperor Thaurissan, but traditionally you will want to send this to the enemy's face, since this deck doesn't last forever and does have to find the kill eventually. So Most of the time, this is just direct damage. It's also really good with Jungle Moonkin for really big bursts of 7 damage. So that's it for all the cards in our League of Explorers Budget Beast Druid deck. Real quickly to discuss the mulligan. There are a few cards you really want to focus on in the mulligan. Primarily, it's your 1-drops, Living Roots, and Sir Finley Murgleton. You only have 2, so you can't really dig too hard for a 1-drop, but if these show up, they're very advantageous. If you're playing a class that has a scary 2-drop that you need to kill, say like a Darnassus Aspirant or a Knife Juggler or something like that, saving a Wrath of the mulligan can make sense. You don't want to leave those around forever, so Wrath is your one way to clear minions while still preserving your own. So look for that. Otherwise, you really want to see your 2-drops here, Druid of the Saber and Huge Toad. These allow you to deposit bodies that can accomplish different things. And also, your 3-drops, Bran and Mounted Raptor, are good as well, just to give you a smooth curve and guarantee that you have some sort of minion to play. Jeweled Scarab is not always great in the mulligan just because its body is so weak. It can depend on the class. If you're playing a class that has 1 health minions, this can trade pretty nicely or ping off a Divine Shield. But it can also be good if you don't get anything else good in the mulligan and you want to guarantee that you have a turn 2 and a turn 3 play. That's what Jeweled Scarab can do. So sometimes you'll want to keep that as well. And we'll go into more mulligan details because we're going to play a couple of games with this deck to actually see it in action. So let's go ahead and do that now. It's still early in the season, so I think we can probably just play ranked. We're still at rank 13. Of course, this rank 13 is pretty competitive compared to a late season rank 13, but it'll be fun to take this deck into some real games against actually competitively viable decks to see how it does. And I've been playing this deck for a few days since the last wing of League of Explorers came out and actually allowed it. I've played something like, I think it's 22 games, and so far our win rate's in the high 50%, so it's good so far, especially for a budget deck, with just a handful of legendaries that aren't really ideal. So if you're playing against rank 20s, rank 15s, this is the kind of deck that could really succeed and propel you up the ladder. So here we actually have a pretty smooth curve. We don't want to see any 5-drops in our mulligan. Sir Finley's great. We won't necessarily know what hero power we want, but choice is always good. Druid of the Saber is a nice 2-drop we can play in stealth, and Bran we can follow it up on turn 3. Remember, we're not worried about Bran's Battlecry in this deck since it's a budget deck. We're happy just to have him as a 3-mana 2/4. And if we get like a Tomb Spider on turn 4, then we could play a pretty cool double Discover effect.
Well met.
So there's no reason for us to coin here to get this out earlier. Sir Finley's fine. One side effect of Sir Finley is they might think you're playing a Murloc deck and scramble for answers and that kind of stuff. Swipe's going to be nice against a Paladin because he has so many 1-health minions. If he has to Silverhand Recruit, Sir Finley's going to trade really nicely here. So here, I think we're actually going to go with Life Tap. We're not super concerned about our own health, but card draw can be super advantageous all the time. This is actually worse than the standard Druid hero power because we can do 1 attack anyway most of the time, and we won't be getting the armor. So Life Tap sounds like the best option here. This is going to give us some late game draw potential to dig for lethal. So this is a legend level Paladin player. This is going to be tough. So see, this is why Sir Finley's so good against certain classes, as he trades so effectively here. We have the possibility to coin out Bran, but there's no reason yet. We can just play this in stealth, and we'll make this trade just because leaving stuff on the board against Paladin is pretty dangerous. They have so many different buff cards and secrets that can activate. We do want to focus on the face most of the time, but against Paladin you have to be careful. Pick your battles. Oh my goodness! This is a Murloc Paladin. You don't see these every day. So there's that Tomb Spider I mentioned. We can combo off Bran, but we need to deal with this first. We can just probably sacrifice our minion here instead of using Wrath just to set up this combo Bran into Tomb Spider.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, he didn't mean to buff our minion here. We have to be careful in ordering here. this is more valuable, even though it looks like this is more valuable because it's a 3/3. But as soon as this dies, this goes back to being a 1/3. So we're going to kill Sir Finley by making this trade. And then we're going to go ahead and de-stealth this just to pile on damage. He might have Consecration or something to kill it, but that would be such a bad play that we don't care. He's probably wondering what the heck our deck is, because it's definitely a little unusual. So if this lives, we can actually get a Druid of the Fang out next turn using the coin. If it doesn't live, probably not going to, we can play a Tomb Spider for the double Discover. So see, this is the one-time Bran is pretty good. Ironbeak Owl can be great against Paladin just because they have Tyrion, multiple ways to buff. I'd like to have another draw, but I think Ironbeak is just too good to pass up against Paladin. Plus, we're going to get another chance to get a body in this next Discover, so... Savage Combatant is pretty good, but so is Stranglethorn Tiger. Tomb Spider is not that useful. It's good, but these two are much better. +2 attack for our hero might be nice when we're drawing in the late game using life tap. But Stranglethorn Tiger could be great too. We're going to go ahead and take the Savage Combatant just because I think it gives us a little bit more flexibility. We're going to make this trade. Hopefully this lives so that we can play Druid of the Fang next turn. We could also play Savage Combatant, coin, life tap, and use the 2 attack to kill something if necessary. So he's scared of Bran, even though he actually doesn't need to be. That's better. This is actually more important to us than his Bran, so... We didn't care about Bran. He probably thinks our deck is all about Bran, which are 2 nice effects of Sir Finley and Bran. It can confuse players because they're not traditionally something they're going to see. So he has an Equality Consecrate, which... It's unfortunate because we had a 7/7, but that only represented 9 mana, and it wasn't a particularly powerful 9 mana. So I think we're just going to play our Savage Combatant to develop a body, and then we're going to life tap to continue building our hand. If we draw Living Roots, we could play it, but otherwise we're just going to have a lot of cards in hand. We could opt to play the Jungle Moonkin to set up for something like a swipe next turn, but since he doesn't have any minions on the board yet, I think we're going to save that as an 8-mana combo to clear a load of Murlocs, because he's probably going to dump a bunch of Murlocs eventually.
For the wild.
And that can be a really nutty combo.
None may steal.
Okay, that's not too bad for us. Oh, this is a perfect swipe. We won't even need the combo. The swipe here is just too valuable. So this is an obvious play. It couldn't line up any better. But now we have some decisions to make. We can coin out a Moonkin, but again, I think we save that for combo potential. I think I'd rather coin out the Tomb Spider just to put another body on the board and refill our hand. And if we don't use the coin soon, we're not going to have an opportunity to. So this is the perfect time to use the coin. Here, this card's too unreliable, too easy to kill. Captain Spirit is totally useless, so Savage Combatant is a pretty obvious choice this time around. We could have chose the life tap there, but we would have been floating more mana and not putting a minion on the board, and he's already used a big clear, so I think the initiative of having minions is more useful at this point.
None may steal.
It's not a bad play, but we can actually silence that if we need to. Do we alternatively just have any way to kill him yet? It's 5, it's 8 damage. We've got stuff like this. We could kill this with a Moonkin Wrath. He's got to be out of spells. I think that's reasonable. We could also just play a Stranglethorn, silence that, kill it. And then we'd have something like 4 or 9 damage next turn. We could Starfire Face. No, let's go ahead and silence this. This is not the kind of deck I think that's going to run a Tyrion. The silence here is pretty valuable because it gets rid of the Divine Shield and the buff. We make this trade just to save the Owl. And then we play the Moonkin to kill this. If he has a Consecrate, we're pretty bad off because the Consecrate will clear the board, including the Moonkin. But he already used one. He's only 13 cards into his deck. I don't see him having it, but it could punish us if he does. But we'll have 9 mana for pretty strong follow-ups next turn. If he doesn't have the Consecrate, or he would have used it. That's a pretty low tempo play for him. That's not helpful at all. We have lethal now, so a lot of lethal. So here's the Moonkin again. We get to do 7. We get to go to face, and the game is over. Pretty fun. So you got to see a couple different cool things from the deck there. Let's go ahead and play one more time with the League of Explorers Budget Beast Druid. See if we can't lose a game against a really dominant deck. That was a little bit of an unusual Paladin deck. Despite it being a legend level player, I'm not sure that was a very refined deck. So, but as you can see, this deck will win you games and can definitely help you climb, especially if you're a beginner trying to make your way up from rank 20, 25. I could see this deck being played pretty feasibly all the way up to rank 12, maybe even 10, with a few adjustments even higher. So, Druid of the Fang is very late game. We don't have the coin, so it's even slower. Sir Finley's great. Mounted Raptor is going to be solid because depending on our hero power that we get from Sir Finley, we could have a turn 2 play. So I'm not going to be too greedy looking for a turn 2. I'd rather just keep this turn 3 and see where we go from there. So that's unfortunately a little slow as well. I'd still like to get a 2-drop here somewhere.
Greetings.
That's not so helpful, but we have time. So for us, we want bodies on the board to proc Savage Roar. So I think Reinforce is the best option here. Dagger Mastery is not appealing. We don't care about healing ourselves. We want to be able to deposit minions. So Reinforce is the best choice. He might be thinking I'm a Murloc Druid that's about to innervate out a few Murlocs. I don't know if that'll adjust his play. He might feel really pressured to kill this. Coin out like a Shadow Word Pain. That would be a mistake for him. This is not our valuable minion. So we didn't get the 2-drop, but thankfully the Paladin hero power is working out like we predicted it might, and we have some options for turn 3. This is another turn 3, turn 4 combo that can fill our hand up nicely. The Mounted Raptor is a solid play too, depending on whether he plays a minion that might be able to kill this. So I think we're going to play the Bran here pretty simply. If he has an answer, it's going to be Shadow Word Pain, which is going to leave him at an awkward mana total. It's going to make him really nervous, so he might kill it and float a mana. If he doesn't kill it, we're not going to have a crazy play, but the same as last game, a nice Tomb Spider, which is really the only way for us to get that extra value out of Bran. Okay, it's a little tough for us to deal with, actually. It might be worth swiping that. If we don't swipe it, he coined already, so he can't cast Holy Nova next turn. Turn 4 for Dragon Priest is really just Twilight Guardian. He might have another one. So maybe I don't have to swipe it. The problem is that he might not have a turn 4, which means he'll want to use his hero power, and he can make a trade and then heal, making this functionally an 8 health minion, potentially. But I do want to be sure that we have depth to go against a priest in a long-term game, so I'm still going to play the Tomb Spider, because getting 2 beasts might get us something like a Malorn and a Gazrilla that are really hard for him to deal with. So, speak of the devil. I think we have to get Malorn. Armored Warhorse is never going to work against a controlled priest. He'll always win the joust, so... okay, let's take them both. Why not? But we're actually not going to attack here. We're going to force him to attack because it makes it less likely that this thing does more damage because we can still swipe next turn. So yeah, he's really worried about that, but we're not so worried about it, are we? So here we still don't have a great way to kill that, unfortunately. We can swipe and trade and keep our Sir Finley alive, but we float a mana, which is a little unfortunate. We can taunt this guy up, make it awkward, but I'm afraid to give him more values on heals. Plus, Holy Nova gets more appetizing for him all the time, so I think we just have to make this play. Doesn't leave us with much, but we actually have a much more powerful hand than this deck traditionally sees, so he might not have answers for this.
I wield the power.
That's a pretty good play. So here I think we just we could play this and taunt it again, and it trades efficiently here, but floats a mana. It's not the best play in the world. I think I just want to do this and get a beast again, see what we get. Huh. I really don't know that having 3 Malorns is good, but just for the heck of it, I think we're going to take it. And then we're going to play this. He could Holy Nova and kill that, but, you know, it's very awkward here still. It doesn't help him kill this, unless he has a Holy Smite or something. Unfortunate, but he's probably just going to make this trade, heal.
My work is paramount.
He's just going to build up the board, yeah, so he's going to make this trade and then heal. I think at this point we just keep playing Malorns, right? He might have a Shadow Word Death for the first one or the second one, but probably not after that. So there's 2 options here. We're actually going to clear this minion, one of these. You might think you could kill this to reduce the chance of him drawing cards, but I would argue that this is a more threatening body to our Malorn. It enables a trade. If he doesn't have an answer to this, he's in trouble. So removing this is valuable in that direction. Plus, it's unlikely that he's going to be able to heal a minion anyway because he doesn't have a way to damage them, and there's no trades that set up damage. They'll both just die if they run in. So I'm not worried about the value from this Northshire Cleric right now. So he'll have Shadow Word Death. That's fine. Oh, and Tomb. Okay, so he's going to steal our Malorn. How many Malorns are there going to be this game? Goodness gracious. So I'm guessing he doesn't have an answer for this one. I don't even know if that's the best play. There might have been a better play, but that's too much fun to pass out. How often do you get 3 straight Malorns? He's going to have an answer for this one too, no doubt. Is that a Valen's Chosen? He has 6 damage on board. It says 7 health, so Valen still kills that. He wants to Valen's Chosen this and run it in, but he's sad that he's going to kill a 5/9 minion. Oh, Light Bomb. Okay, that's actually a good play. I don't know why that took him so long. So, we're going to issue a greetings here for the 3rd Malorn. And then we're going to Hero Power finally because we have the right mana alignment. He's laughing too, I bet. I think we're losing this game despite having the 3 Malorns, but so he doesn't have an answer for this one right away. It looks like he's digging. We still have 1 Malorn in our deck as well, so we could actually play a 4th Malorn or an infinite number of Malorns at some point. That's pretty good for us, actually, that he gave up a lot of board presence for that. I'm sad that it's not hitting his face for 9 mana, but he's using a lot of resources, so this is going to be a tough follow-up for him as well. Because he's just dealt with 3 9/7s, and now he has a 4th 7/7. He's got to be running out of answers soon, even though he's drawing through his deck pretty quickly. He might have drawn another Entomb or Shadow Word Death, but... You can see the kind of crazy fun stuff this deck does. That's going to be a Valens that's going to leave that with 1 health, which is pretty tough for us to deal with. He got his Malord. Oh goodness, we don't have a way to kill that at all. So he has 16, 17 damage on the board, and we only have 19 health, so we do have to find some way to kill this stuff. We do have a Savage Roar, so there's a way to sneak out a win here if we're sneaky, you know. I almost wonder if he has some way to do 2 damage. We could almost risk it and go face for 9 damage and play a piloted Shredder setup for next turn lethal, but I think we just have to Savage Roar and eat some damage. So we're gonna play this in charge. We're gonna play this, and we're gonna Savage Roar to kill the Malorn and take 7 damage. And I'm actually not gonna bother with killing that. We need to do damage eventually, or we cannot win with this deck, especially because our health total is getting pretty low. So gonna force him to have answers. Priests have tough times with 4 attack minions, so that 6 damage to face might make the difference. And he's drawn so much already, and his hand is already 7 cards, that I can't respect this threat of the Northshire any longer. It's actually pretty tough. He can make this trade now. That might have helped if we draw a Wrath, but we didn't. So here we just have to load up the board. He's so close to killing us. We need to get sticky minions out. Hope for a prayer here, because he's so many cards that we're probably dead very, very soon. If he's probably scared of another combo. He thinks we're running Force of Nature, because that would be in a traditional competitive Druid deck. We're not. Oh, that's a low tempo play for him. Man, a Savage Roar here puts us close to lethal sometimes. That's interesting. So we can actually kill the Ysera, right? We got 9, 11, 12 damage, especially with this. We could do 7. We could kill the Ysera and keep some stuff on the board. Alternatively, we can do 6, 7, 14 damage to his face, which puts him at 8. He has a Ysera plus Ysera Awakens hits for 9. So Ysera Awakens wins the game. Dream doesn't help him. Holy Nova would do 4. That doesn't kill us. Nightmare does 5. That kills us. So 2 out of the 5 Ysera cards kill us.
Time waits for no one.
I think we have to kill Ysera. The potential here is too good. That's actually not bad, because it's a Savage Roar body and it buys us some time. I don't like our hand, though. This is not a scary hand. But a Savage Roar is 8 plus 8, 16 damage. Actually, 17, because this will be... Oh, my goodness. So, that was a scary Ysera Awakens. Yeah, so we don't have a way to kill that. We can try and see what we get. Yeah, we can't kill it. Where shall I strike? Theoretically stay alive. But it's not even likely. That was our only choice, though. He has so many cards still, I think we're probably dead. So, I actually made the right play killing Ysera there. He did have the Ysera Awaken, so that would have been lethal. Yeah, so that's game. So that was pretty fun. There's an argument to be made that playing 3 straight Malorns there was actually a bad play. Priests have a lot of ways to kill a single minion, especially since he had minions on the board. We might have been better off playing like 2 minions per turn and saving those Malorns a little while. But when you get 3 straight Malorns, that's an opportunity that you just can't pass up. So I think we were probably going to lose that game anyway, just because that deck was so well suited to beat us. Priest is tough, and he drew so many cards, and we had trouble that I don't think it mattered, but it's a debate to be made. So that's going to do it for me in the League of Explorers Budget Beast Druid deck. You saw the deck in action. It's insanely fun. Crazy stuff like that happens pretty regularly. It's still competitive as long as you play it consistently and predictably and think about your turns and whether you need to do damage right now or save it or trade and all that fun stuff. So hopefully you learned a little bit about playing the deck. I hope it works for you as well. I know I've been seeing quite a bit of success with it. So this is the list again. Do take a look. There's the curve for you. If you have any questions about the deck, please do leave a comment. I'm happy to answer and offer advice. If you're wondering about card replacements, just ask. Let me know what you've got, and I'll tell you what you can swap in. It'll make the deck even stronger. So this is the League of Explorers Budget Beast Druid deck assembled from League of Explorers cards and 500 or less dust for anything that you need to craft. So get out there and play this deck. It's tons of fun. It's pretty strong as well. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.